Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well and keeping safe in the current climate, staying at home. Um, as you can hopefully see, I should be sharing my screen with you. I'm Josh Neem. I'm the pre-sales director here at BlueFort. Today, we're going to just run through the first of our cyber excellence webinars. So this is the first in a lineup of four. We'll be focusing on visibility for the purpose of this. So equally, if we can try and make this interactive, so there is a chat window that all of you will have. If you have any questions, queries, anything like that that springs into mind as we're going through this, please feel free to post them in the chat. If they're relevant to what we're talking about, I can try and answer them as we go. Other than that, I've got a 5-minute Q&A assigned at the end of the session if I get us finished in time. And in that 5-minute Q&A, obviously, I will go through any questions that I haven't answered, and feel free to kind of fire over any questions in the interim. So without further ado, if we just walk forward in here. So as I say, today we're focusing on visibility, but just to give you an idea of the context of that. So the ethos we've got here at BlueFort is really around visibility, intelligence and control, and identity or identity and access management kind of sits at the core and at the center of that. As I said, we're going to be running a few of these. So today we're focusing on visibility. And we will have similar quick 20-30 minute webinars around intelligence control and identity to follow as well. So if we drill a little bit more into visibility, really the idea here and why we do this infographic as a circle is that all of these are kind of continuous. So there's no set order that we should be lining up visibility, intelligence and control. Visibility tends to be the kind of logical starting place, but a lot of companies, a lot of our customers will have bits of intelligence, bits of control, probably don't have the full picture of visibility. And really, as it says on this slide here, if you can't see it, if you haven't got that visibility, how on earth are you going to manage that device, manage that user, manage that system, that application, whatever it may well be? So visibility really is key, and making sure that we've got good visibility of the entire organization. And I'm talking about, devices, networks, applications, users, and so on and so forth. Equally, if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, it was probably a much easier task. Sysadmins had a very much a walled garden approach. You had your internal LAN, your internal network, and you pretty much knew everything that was going on in there. Nowadays, that perimeter is vanishing. The walls are being knocked down. And with more and more cloud, SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, insert your acronym here. But with all of these services now bleeding out of the perimeter, and that perimeter starting to vanish, it's even harder to kind of gain visibility on everything that you need, on all of your corporate assets. So I've really boiled this down into to four kind of main groups to discuss today. So in no particular order, we've got devices, data, users, and networks. There is a lot more, but for those of you who know me, you know that I like to talk, and I could probably rattle on all day, but to try and keep this into a 25-30 minute session, I'm really going to boil down onto these four different groups here. So essentially all of these interleave. So while I've broken them out into four different subjects here, ultimately all of these are well interwoven with one another. Now more so than ever, the proliferation of different device types. We've got, the likes of IoT, OT, IT departments are having to envelop building control systems, security cameras. We've got SCADA systems, operational technologies that are now all getting enveloped into that corporate network. And equally, from an end user's point of view, we've got smartphones, we've got Alexas and Google Home devices, and apologies if I've just set off the ones that you've got sat on your desks. But the point that I'm making here is it's not so cut and dry that everyone in the office gets a desktop or a laptop with a corporate build on it now. People are wanting to go down the BYOD route. People are wanting to work from mobile devices, from iPads, from Android devices. Equally with data, with the kind of surge of cloud. and it's becoming a lot more available, a lot more cost effective for businesses now. Keeping tabs on your data is much more difficult than it ever used to be. It was nice and easy when you had a couple of central file shares on a server behind lock and key in a room in your building. Now storage could be anywhere and everywhere. And equally, we now have to ask ourselves the questions about what is a sanctioned storage repository for corporate data versus unsanctioned. So, there'll be a lot of people out there that are moving to the SharePoints and the OneDrives, maybe moving to G Suite applications and to Google's cloud. And then there are a lot of personal services out there as well. People with Dropbox accounts, people with iCloud accounts where they're storing their personal data in the cloud. And this can be a real concern for business, especially if you're heavily regulated, or if you're in the EU and having to deal with things like GDPR, then you really need to understand where your data is and be able to put effective policies around that. And the same is true of your users. So, we've got permanent staff, we've got temp staff, there'll be contractors in. There might be a guy coming in that needs network access to fix your air conditioner for a week. And we need to understand what we're going to do with these users. And of course, with the invention of the cloud and high-speed internet, albeit those are quite marketing buzzwords, networks have got more complex. And by that, I don't mean we've gone from ring or star topologies or anything like that. I mean networks span the globe literally now, and multinational organisations need their networks to work efficiently, reliably across various different continents now. And the cloud has enabled a lot of that. But at the same time, it's thrown up a whole load of new challenges around this as well. So forgive the text on this slide, but ultimately there are a bunch of questions that you need to be asking yourself about devices, data, users, networks, and how you can gain visibility of all of these. For a lot of people that are listening, purely the simple question of how many devices have you got on your network? What are those devices? Can you manage them? I would hazard a guess, and I ask this question to a lot of our customers, the majority of people out there probably can't answer that. They can put a finger in the air and they can turn around and go, okay, well, we've got 2,000 staff, so we've probably got about that amount of laptops. Let's assume that most people have got a phone, and they can make an educated guess. But how do you actually know what devices have you got touching your network? What defines your network now? Is your network purely as it used to be, the LAN inside your perimeter on your side of the firewall? Or do you start to class the cloud as your network as well? Perhaps you've got private cloud or even public cloud services that are used on a regular basis and applications that now reside completely in the cloud. So simple questions like, how many devices have you got? Can you manage those devices? Are they vulnerable or not? How do we know these answers? With our data, where are we storing our data? How are we assigning effective policies to that data? How are we making sure that users can work from an iPad at home and still collaborate with the rest of their team without actually keeping the IT security team up having sleepless nights because they don't know if their data is being leaked out to personal storage repositories, being sent via personal email accounts. So actually being able to gain visibility of, well, where is this data? What is my data? Is this PII? Is this sensitive? Is this mission critical? And then being able to use that to set effective policies. So we'll come on to how we use some of this visibility in the later webinars. And as I say, visibility naturally bleeds into that intelligence wheel, and that intelligence naturally bleeds into giving you better controls over all of these. But for the purpose of today, it's really just to get people thinking and sitting here going, well, okay, can I answer these questions? Do I know what kind of users I've got? How regularly they're accessing corporate resources, be that an application or a network, might just be logging in for timesheets. How am I sure that they haven't moved roles and that they don't still need access to that, or they need access to that revoked to get access to a new application suite or a new set of applications for a new job role? How am I even sure where my networks are? I've talked to customers and we've put visibility tools into their networks, and we found whole VLANs, whole network segments that they weren't even aware that they had. Perhaps it's been an M&A, and they've acquired a new company, and they've had to very, very quickly onboard a whole load of new IT infrastructure that they're unfamiliar with. And they quite simply just don't know that they've got whole VLANs, whole segments of their network, or what those devices are that are connected to that. When you pull all of this back to your threat landscape, all of a sudden this becomes a real problem. Not having that visibility leaves doors open. You're leaving you might be locking your front door, but you're leaving your back doors, your patio doors, all your windows unlocked because you just don't know that they're there. So these are the sort of things that we try and discuss with customers and find out and plot exactly where they are, what levels of kind of visibility they've got. And the idea is that there's no right or wrong with this. It's just trying to understand, what have I got visibility of? And ultimately, you don't know what you don't know. And that's the chicken and egg scenario here, is that without knowing that you know everything, there's no way that you can understand. So I know that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but ultimately what we're getting at here is there are tools out there on the market, and I'll come on to discuss some of those that are very good at giving you visibility of your entire network and being able to give you posture and threat scores on this as well. So, if I've got a VoIP VLAN there and I discover that there's a VLAN for VoIP, I really only want to be seeing VoIP traffic on that VLAN. I don't want to be seeing data traffic. That VLAN probably doesn't need to talk to my server VLAN. So gaining visibility around that can give you real actionable insights about how your network's operating. Exactly the same with data. I might say, well, I'm happy to have data on the internal network, but I really want to understand any data that's crossing that boundary into the cloud, be it sanctioned or unsanctioned. First and foremost, before I can set the policies up, I just need to understand what's going on. What is today looking like for me? Are users using iCloud Drive, OneDrive, SharePoint? Is all of my data disappearing off into Dropbox and I was completely unaware of it? And again, gaining that visibility, asking those questions, and getting that information in really then allows you to put in some actionable insights to actually drive forward policies, to drive forward better working environments, make sure that we're actually backing the right applications. The other thing here is if all of your users are using application X and you're telling them they should be using application Y, then this is a great way to go, well, hold on a minute, now that I can see you're all using this other application, there must be a good reason for that, right? So let's actually start to look into adopting that application, and giving you that visibility allows you to understand what your users are doing, where your data is traveling, what your devices are doing, whether things are secure or not. So I'm very conscious of time. And I just wanted to touch on some of the tools. So there's a few logos here that I'm sure you'll be familiar with. And ultimately, the reason I've picked some of these is just to give you a flavor for some of the tools that are out there that can help you with those kind of 4 topics of devices, data, networks, and users. So, we've got tools like Wandera, that will give you great visibility into what users are doing on their mobile estate of devices, what they're doing on their iPhones, on their Android devices, on their Windows tablets, exactly what their browsing habits are. And equally is going to give you that security as well of if they are hitting, 0-day links, phishing attacks, any of that, that we can then start to understand this and see what the threat landscape is. Similarly, we've got tools like Doc Authority, brilliant tools for being able to actually sit down and understand your data. So to be able to turn around and go, okay, I've got a warehouse of data. How do I know what's in this box versus what's in that box? And ultimately, that's what your unstructured data is today, right? It's sat there on a CIFS share or SMB or, whatever it may well be. But ultimately, there's probably years and years of worth of data, and having tools we can go in and go, okay, this is important. This is not so important. These all look like purchase orders, or these all look like invoices. These all look like PII data. They've got credit cards or sensitive information in, and being able to quickly classify and clarify all of that data for you is really, really important today, especially with the various different compliance rules that are being pushed down on us. We've got other tools like Forescout, great for network visibility. That's going to passively look at all OT, IoT, all of your networks, give you a good understanding of quite literally everything that's out there, how it's connecting, how often it is, how vulnerable it is. And then we've got tools like FireEye and F5, which are absolutely brilliant for giving you visibility of users, visibility of your threat landscape, how things are traversing your network. And finally, tools like Logarithm, which can centrally correlate all of this. And a lot of these tools are available in cloud, hybrid, on-premise, so they really fit regardless of where you are on that maturity curve, whether you're cloud averse or whether you're cloud first. There are tools here that can help you, that will sit down and enable you to have that visibility. So I've seen a few questions coming in. So what I'm going to do now, if I dive into a quick Q&A, some of these questions I've answered in chat best I can. As you can probably tell, I'm not very good at typing and talking at the same time, but we'll run through a few questions and answers now, and then we'll call it a day for this webinar, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks to move on to our intelligence webinars. So I'll say thank you to everyone for your time now. If you don't have any questions, you're more than happy to drop off this call. For those of you who've posted questions that I haven't answered, or anyone that's got any further questions, feel free to hang around for the next 5 minutes while we run through some questions. Otherwise, thanks ever so much for your time, guys. Cheers.